And my fictional role model, of course, is Sheela-na-Gig, and she's a confident, funny, feisty, and sexually self-sufficient, especially when compared to the alternative of the Virgin Mary. Mary, the unfucked, allegedly. Of course, your Christians claim that she's the mother of their God. Of course, they didn't like the idea of their main lady being Rogered, so they said she was a sexless, perpetual virgin, though they refused to give her the status of goddess. So here she is in her blue chador. But you know, our ancient ancestors believed in lots of gods and goddesses, and then some guys came along who decided that they were going to invent some new religions and modernize by coming up with the idea that there is only one all-powerful super god who created everything. And it started with the Jews, then the Christians, then the Muslims. But of course, your Christians, being very macho and competitive, said, but actually ours is a 3-in-1 god, and to really fuck things up, they said one of theirs was a man. So we have this crazy story. You think it's going to be a bit like the 3 bears. You know, there's the daddy god called God, there's the baby god called Jesus, and there's the mummy god called Mary. No, there's no mummy god. There's only a fucking Holy Ghost. They got a ghost to make up their Trinity. And so, who impregnated her to make her the mother of God? Well, there are 3 suspects. Obviously there's the daddy god, and there's the Randy ghost god, and there's her fiancé, a very old man called Joseph. So who in fact did impregnate her? What a porn story this is to begin with. And you know, it is the law that schools have to hold a daily act of worship to this Christian God. Crazy. And here's Mary, the teenager, was fobbed off on this very old man called Joseph, who was a carpenter by trade. Bit similar to Princess Diana, who also was a virgin, who was fobbed off on an older man, although Charles was much younger than old Joe. But of course Diana was in a ménage à trois, whereas Mary seems to be in a ménage à quatre. She seems to be there with the 2 god types, the one that Frank Zappa called the cloud guy, and then the Randy spooky one, and the husband-to-be, old Joseph the carpenter, who was of course Jesus' stepdad. And of course we all know that he was sponging off his parents until he was 30 years old, which was really very old for those days. And that was of course until he came out as gay and he actually left home. I mean, we know all of this from these early sort of hello type magazines, these gossip magazines called The Gospels. Of course they were again all written by men, so they're very much like lad mags. And so they tell us this story about Mary on the 25th of March being visited by, wait for it, an angel called Gabriel. I mean, he must have flown in through a window. He was the full size one, you know, in the white sheet and the long curly hair and the great big flapping white wings. And he comes, she must have been shit scared, and announced to her that she's going to have a baby, the Son of God. And of course you can read all about this in Wikipedia under the Annunciation, when he comes and tells her that she's going to have a baby. And of course Mary says, but how can this be, seeing as I am a virgin? And the angel said unto her, the Holy Ghost will come upon you. So there you have it. She was fucked by a Holy Ghost. Isn't that a great porn story to begin with? We know very little about Mary except for this, the very slushy birth story, which of course is reenacted every Christmas on the 25th of December, exactly 9 months later. She gave birth in a stable without a midwife, surrounded by animals apparently to keep them warm, and shepherds. And of course they have this story with only one female player. It's entirely against equal opportunities. All these girls vying for the part of Mary, just to wear blue and white sheets and a cushion stuffed into their tummy to make them look pregnant. And there is no pink or sequins or spangles or tiaras allowed. And there's loads of pictures and statues of this mother and child. And then really very little until at the end of Jesus' life, where he was, killed and, strung up on the cross, and these pictures and statues of her clinging on to his feet at the bottom, weeping and wailing. There was one mention not long after Jesus had come out, when he went to a wedding with his mum, and she actually asked him to help with the wine supplies. But they still insisted that she was a perpetual virgin, even though she went on to have other children. And of course she had obviously none of the joys of sex when she had her unplanned pregnancy, when she was, fucked, raped, impregnated by that Holy Ghost. Mind you, admittedly, no girl or woman enjoys the first time that she's poked by a penis. I mean, it is really like a battering ram trying to break through the hymen. And of course, who gave it that name? Hi men, welcome to my inner sanctum. What a load of bollocks. But genuine sex education should warn girls that breaking the hymen, losing the virginity, is actually a bit like a minor operation. It's sore, it hurts, and it's bloody, and it should be available on the National Health Service. And if it's not available, at least use a stranger. I mean, that's the sort of information that should be given in sex education classes, and it was certainly what I was passing on to my daughter. Now in my case, he was a German, it was in a Spanish campsite, and the anaesthetic was vino tinto. But your religions are just obsessed by virgins. It's porn fantasy. They all have this image of penetrating and breaking through that hymen, being the first to do it. And of course it comes from their womb envy. You see, because it's only women who give birth, we know that they are the mother of a child, whereas a man can never be sure. And this insecurity causes them to have womb envy. And of course that's where they came up with this ridiculous story about Adam giving birth to Eve from his spare rib. But of course they said this Mary was very modest and pure and chaste, in both senses of the word, because of course she must have been chased by these strange male creatures. Although you'll never find her wearing high heels. In fact, if you look at these statues enough, you'll find that the poor creature had no feet at all. Now this must have something to do with them being terrible foot fetishists back then. I mean, the very sight of a woman's feet would give them a hard-on. I suppose it's a bit like, your Muslim men seeing a woman's hair and they get a stiffy. But you will not find her wearing the high heels, and of course that is why this is very much part of the sex industry. The image is always that of stilettos. It's very much a porn aesthetic, and of course trannies love wearing them. But back home in Ireland too, all the girls seem to be called Mary. It was one of the most common names, and our last two presidents were Mary. And we have songs that are full of the praises of Mary. And then, you know, she was the only role model offered with this bloody Mary. And they had Latin names as well in Ireland, like Annunciata and Assumpta and Concepta and Immaculata. Oh, and then there's the one Dolores, meaning sorrows, named after Mary, the mother of sorrows. Sure, it's no wonder that I chose Sheela-na-Gig, who definitely enjoys safe solo sex without the worry of an unwanted pregnancy, AIDS, or a venereal disease. And do you know what? This is why Australian women are called Sheela. You know, Germaine Greer didn't know that, and she's a bit of a know-all. So there you are. Sheila after Sheela-na-Gig. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.